I also would like to make the Olam aware of the fact that Torah Anytime is having their annual campaign. Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach. We have tremendous Hakaras HaTov because Torah Anytime spreads Torah to Yidden at any time. So we'd like to ask the Olam, if you plan on donating, please use the page Simcha Bunim Berger to donate. Okay, so we can get to our goal. Yashakayach. And a grace shkayach to Torah Anytime for what they do. Okay. Tov Reish Tzadik Tes, Parshas Yisro, letter Yud Ches. It's a Shabbos of Kabbalah Satayra. Today was Tu B'Shvat. Let's see if we can, Be'ezus Hashem, be Mishalev and learn some of the Inyanim. We're going to begin with Tov Reish Tzadik Tes. This piece of Zera Shimshon, letter Yud Ches, focuses primarily on a Kapitel Tehillim. Kapitel Tehillim Ches. He quotes almost every pasuk in the Kapitel. It's a short one. Lam Natzeach ala Gites Mizmor LeDavid. Hashem Adonenu. Hashem, our Master, Mo'adir Shimcha B'chol Haaretz Asher Tano Hoidcha Al Hashamayim. Allow your hoid, your glory, to stay Bashamayim. Tano Hoidcha Bashamayim. Give your hoid to stay in heaven. To which the pasuk says, Mipi oilelim v'yoinkim yasadata ois. Through the mouths of the young sucklings, oilelim, the little children, and the yoinkim yasadata ois. Leman tzarerecha, so that your enemies, lahashbis oyev umisnakem, so you can have nakama against all of your foes. Asks the Zera Shimshon, Yesh ledaktek, ma kesher yesh lepasuk zeh im pasuk hakoydem mo'adir shimcha b'chol haaretz. What is the connection between, you start, again, Hashem Adonenu, mo'adir shimcha b'chol haaretz, how your great is your name in the world, t'no'idcha al shamayim, and then mepi oilim v'yoinkim yasadet ha'ois. Connect the ima pasuk shel achrav mo'enesh kisis kerenu. What is man that you shall remember him? Uben adam kisifketenu, and a person that you should give him pikudah, which means you should give him appointing him with different commandments. And then v'oid ma'ud tzorerecha. Who are these enemies? Uma inyan lahashbis oyev mekan. The Zera Shimshon's asking 4 questions and basically asking what's the pshat in this parsha. What's the pshat in this Kapitel Tehillim? As we will see, these psukim are the conversation that the angels, the malachim, had with the Eibishter, with the Rabbeinu Shalom, as Moshe Rabbeinu ascended to Shamayim. The Gemara in Shabbos, Pei Chesamid Beis, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Let's begin with this Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, B'sha'a she'ala Moshe l'maram. When Moshe went up to Shamayim, Amru malach hasharis lefei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rabbeinu Shalom, ma leyelid isha beinenu. How is it that a human being is here? What is a Yelid Isha, a person of flesh and blood, doing up in heaven? By this time, Moshe Rabbeinu, as we know, Arboim Yoim v'Arboim Laila, Lechem lo yachalti umayim lo shasisi. Moshe Rabbeinu had refined his body so that it was capable of going up to Shamayim. Let's talk Tu B'Shvat for a minute. Let's talk Tu B'Shvat. What is the Yom Tov of Tu B'Shvat? The Yom Tov of Tu B'Shvat is the Chag of Gan Eden. It's the Yom Tov of Gan Eden. Favos. A little snippet. When Adam HaRishon was created, where was he put? He was in Gan Eden, correct? He was there, and he was told, Mikol eitz achoil toichal. The trees, the fruits of the trees, that is your source of life. That's your parnasa. You don't need to do anything other than just pick the fruits off of the trees. That's all you need to do. That's all you need. And that will be the sustenance of how you will survive. This pikudah, this rule that Adam, man, was needed to eat nothing else than just the fruits of the trees, lasted for how many generations, Rabbi Isai? 1 day? 1 year? How long?
3 hours.
When did they start eating animals?
After Noach.
By Noach. Today's daf, tomorrow's daf yomi. Sanhedrin, tomorrow's daf. When did they start eating animals? Which generation? 10 generations in. Nie is wusste gegessen. Schulen haben sie gehabt. What did they have? Kigel. What did they eat? Yeah, they had. You know what kind of schulen they had? Rabbi Isai, parvet schulent. Fleisch. There was no meat back then because they didn't eat any meat. So was it all vegetation? That's probably too. Yeah. So Rabbi Isai, no need to kill animals. Everything you needed in Gan Eden was right there. It's true, he was only there for a few hours and was kicked out, but that lifestyle, at least that part of not needing, having to be able to, yes, B'zeyas apecha toicha lechem oru ha'adam, and now you're going to have to work for it. But they weren't eating anything else other than what grew from the ground. Now, let's go a step weiter. Adam HaRishon, when he was in Gan Eden, was able to be there because at that point in time, his body as well as his neshama were in sync with each other. There was nothing wrong with his body. He hadn't eaten anything that he wasn't supposed to. It hadn't separated from his neshama. What happens after a person passes away? Where do they go? What happens? You ever heard of the prayer Keil Malei Rachmim? Yeah, Alavesin. Began Eden tehei menuchasoi. He's in the Gan. What do you mean Began Eden? I thought he's in the ground. The body's in the ground. The neshama's in Gan Eden. Why isn't the body in Gan Eden? Because it's not connected to the neshama. Because it's been separated. The neshama can always be in Gan Eden. It's the body after the sin of Adam HaRishon that's not matim. Do you know what mitzvahs do? Mitzvahs are there to fuse the body back to the neshama. Because once it got separated, you need to put it back together. That's why there's exactly the amount of mitzvahs that equal the body. Ramach, mitzvahs keneged ramach of the 248 parts of the body. Because after the sin, and now there is a body that is not connected to the neshama, so you need to refuse them. That's why the Zohar HaKadosh calls mitzvahs 613 eitzes. They're eitzes of how to refuse. Shasa Ramach, 365, keneged the Gidim, 248, keneged the Atzamais, to reconnect the body to the soul. for those heilige Tanoim or Amoraim that the Gemara tells us stories, like Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who jumped over the wall and took the sword of the Yetzer, of the Malach HaMavis with him, when their bodies were so connected to their neshamas, at that stage, there was nothing wrong with their body, and why couldn't their body and the neshama go in? Gesinte hate. They were able to do it, 100%. So, Gan Eden is a place where people belong as long as their body and their neshama are in sync with each other fully. The neshamas will always belong in Gan Eden. It's the body that's the problem. That's where the chesaron is. Now, just because I mentioned Tu B'Shvat for a minute, and then we'll get back to the Zera Shimshon, what happens, steht in Svarim, on Tu B'Shvat? The sraf, which is the koyach of the tree to produce fruits, it's the koyach, you look at a tree, now it's dead. Look at all of them. No, they're mamish dead. But something significant happened today. The neshama of the tree went into the tree, and in a few months you'll see how beautiful a neshama can turn as dead wood into flowers and into fruits and make that tree productive. Hu hadin, whatever happens in the oilam hagashmi happens in the oilam haruchni. In Devarim Perek Chav Pasuk Yotes it says Ki ha'odam eitz hasodeh. Ki ha'odam eitz hasodeh. A person is like a tree. The actions of a person are considered as peiros. Eilu dvarim sha'odam oichol peiroi sehen ba'olam hazeh v'akeren kayemes la'olam haba. Imru tzadik ki toiv ki pri malaleim yoichelu. The actions of a righteous person is his and her peiros. We have peiros too. Arboim yoim koidim yitziras havlad. We then talk about the identity of the person, who he is and who he should be. 40 days before creation of a child, there's already a hatama between the neshama, even though the guf isn't there yet, but it's been designated which person this shall be and who he should be mezavig with. It's already happening. 40 days before the beginning of the world, according to Shitas Rabbi Yoshua, which is in Nisan, 40 days before, if the world, Yesh Oimrim B'Tishrei Nivra Olam, Yesh Oimrim B'Nisan Nivra Olam, correct? The Tosfos says in Shabbos, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chayim, that B'Machshava it was in Tishrei, B'Maisa it is in Nisan. Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan is Zehayim Tchilas Ma'asecha, which is when man was created. Chav Hey Elul is the first day of creation in Tishrei, because man b'machshava was on Rosh Hashanah. Chafei Adar is 25, this first day of creation. You with me, Rabbi Isai? Chafei Adar, you got it? Because that's the Sunday of creation. 40 days before that is Tu B'Shvat. So Tu B'Shvat is the Arboim Yoim Lifnei Hayetzira. That's today. So when the Sraf goes into the Elon down here, the Neshama in the Elon Hagodol, which is in the Tzuras HaAdam, happens over there within us. And the potential for the chiyus that we have to have, that Klal Yisrael needs when we're born, when we, Klal Yisrael, become HaChodesh Hazeh Lochem Rosh Chodoshim, when Klal Yisrael's born as a nation. What's the difference between the Rosh Hashanah of Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei and the Rosh Hashanah of Nisan? The Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei is the beginning of the world. The Rosh Hashanah of Nisan is the beginning of Klal Yisrael. Happy birthday, Klal Yisrael. It's your hatchala. It's your beginning. HaChodesh Hazeh lachem. You start, you Yidden, begin with Nisan. B'Nisan nigalu, b'Nisan asidim ligoyel. That Zman of Nisan is when the world came to its creation practically. That's the beginning of Klal Yisro. When does Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that Haschola, begin? It starts on Chav Hei Adar, because that was day one. 40 days before that is Tu B'Shvat. So that's when this neshama comes into the guf to give us the possibility, empower us to do all that we need to do, so that in 30 days you have Purim, in 60 days you have already Leil of Haseder. All of those kaiches we're empowered. And just like you don't see it in the tree, but you know the sraf is there already, give it a few days, give it a few months, you'll see how everything blossoms. Who I did in Klal Yisrael. So you might not feel it, but be aware of the fact that we were empowered with this ruchnius, which we can actualize over the next few weeks, both in Purim, that's one type of geula, both in Pesach, another type of geula. But Zachinu, we're zeicha to learn that at Kama, the neshama and the guf are fused together, and as much as they're fused together, they belong in Gan Eden. That's the proper tzuras ha'adam. That's the way a man was created. When Moshe Rabbeinu, now let's come full circle. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shamayim, he was a perfect person, guf and neshama. Sinish given, there was nothing missing. Vayomer, like it says, Moshe, Moshe. He called out to him, his guf and his neshama were perfectly in sync. So much so, eventually when Moshe Rabbeinu is nifter, Lo yoda ishes kfurosai. Says the Maral. What's the pshat lo yoda ishes kfurosai? Moshe's whole body was a hechetimtza for his neshama. There's no such a, me and you, we have bodies that have ritzinus, whether it's what our neshama wants, whether it's what our neshama doesn't want, but we do what our body wants. Hopefully, we have the siyata deshmaya to only use our body for what our neshama wants. But it's hard work to get there. It's hard to be focused and just, you talked about rebbes. They eat only to be mekayim their neshama. Not because the chulent is good, and not because the shmorg is good. No, my neshama, wow, that's a big madrega. Tell yourself that all you're having hana is just because of your guf. Tell yourself that story. Halavai, it should be true sometimes. But halavai it is. And when it is, it's taka, your body is not doing something other than the neshama. It's tzigestelt. Moshe Rabbeinu's guf was totally fused with his neshama. That's why when Moshe Rabbeinu spoke the words of the Torah, it was Shechina, Medaberes Matayich Groiner. The Shechina was speaking from him. He could be up in Shamayim. He could be with Malachim. His guf was so refined that it was up there. Arboim yoim, arboim laila, lechem lo yachalti, mayim lo shosisi. The body has no rotzain whatsoever other than being a vessel for the neshama. Aber, he's still a Yelid Isha. Ask the Malachim, what's he doing here? Says the Eibishter, he's coming to be Mekabel the Torah. He's coming to get the Torah. Mo Yiladisha ben Amalem lekabel Torah ba'am lefan of Chemda genuza gishigonza lecha chameis v'shivim v'arba doiris koidim shenivra oilam. It's been around for 974 generations, and now you want to give it to Basav Adam. And now he quotes another pasuk from Parshas. How in the world can you go ahead and give this Torah to them? How can you give something so glorified to a human being? Hashem Adonenu mo adir shimcha b'chol haaretz asher tnu hoidcha ala shamayim. Leave it up there. Leave it up there. David HaMelech tells us how and what the Eibishter said, or what the Eibishter said, and why he decided he was going to give the Torah to Bnei Yisro. The pasuk in Tehillim, the pasuk we started with, Mipi oilelim v'yonkim yasada ta'oiz, the voice and the words of kleine Yiddische Kinderlach. Says the Zera Shimshon, v'yesh loimer, she'amru zal, shekishaba Kadosh Baruch Hu litn Torah Yisrael, shol mehem, he asked them for arvus. I want guarantors. Guarantee for me the Torah. I want someone to guarantee an orev. Vilab Soif, says the Medrash, Bunim shalahem nichnesu arevim liyisrael. They will be the arvus. Your kinderlach, our kinderlach, the einiklach. They're going to be the arvus. Like it says, Mepi oilelim v'yoinkim yasadata, you were miyased. You gave the foundation of oiz, of the strength. Hashem oiz li'amoyite. V'oilam makshim, ho yoshalamatim tzarch arvis. V'zev tzarch dafka ma'bonim. If you have to have arvis, you need someone to guarantee, and it has to be the kinder. Hamalachim shein leim bonim beis tzroy toinim shit lemat Torah. So what's the tzad that the malachim should be able to get the Torah? They don't have kids. V'o'ein lahem shum arvis liten. What are they providing? Says the Zera Shimshon, I want to tell you a Zera Shimshon Chiddush. V'lefi daitenu, bo hakosav letaretz kush yezu mamish. You know what? They, the angels, don't need arvus, because they're kadosh v'tahar. They're not going to mess it up. They, the angels, can keep the Torah in heaven on arvus. Tam, people, humans need arvus. Farvos, because our bodies and our neshamas are not always on the same madrega, and we mess up. So what's going to happen to the Torah? V'oilam einem miskayim ela behevel piyim shel tinoikas shel beis rabban. It is the purity of the children. It's got to be the kinderlach, those heilige kinderlach who learn Torah behevel piyim. Kida amar le'abaya l'rava. It's actually in our Gemara. It's Rav Papa l'didivi didoch mai. Amalei, he said, Eina doima hevel sheyesh beichet lehevel she'ein beichet karmina b'Shabbos. Let's take a look at the Gemara Daf Kuf Yotes for a moment. The Gemara says like this: so heilig ein ha'olam miskayim ela b'shvil hevel tinoike shel beis rabban. You know what keeps the world going? The purity of the Yiddish kinderlach who learn Torah b'tahara. They might not learn Torah so deep. Maybe Kametz Aleph O. Oy vayomer Hashem and Hashem hat gezogt el Moshe. But it's so heilig. They're so pure. They haven't, hopefully, said any foul language. They don't know that yet. They have such purity. They're so pure. Amar Rish Lakish says the Gemara, what about me and you? What about us? When a kid, he's still so young. What does a kid, he doesn't know doing anything wrong. When he learns Torah, and he learns Torah, oy des heilig. That the angels have no answer for. That the angels have no answer. You can give the Torah to this world and let the malachim, tell the malachim, we have our own little angels here. We have our own little kinderlach, and they're pure, they're the arvus that the Torah belongs in this world. Continues the Zera Shimshon Isa Medrash ala posek hakoil kol Yaakov kol zman shetziftzuf koilon shel tenoike shel beis rabba nishma beita kinesiz abot Medrash shel Yaakov ein yedei Esav sholtois. As long as it's koil kol Yaakov of those sweet little kinderlach, don't worry about the hands of Esav. Don't worry about your enemy. Ve'hein heim divrei malachim. This is what the conversation between Moshe Rabbeinu and the Malachim was all about. Yesh lecha litan Torah l'shamayim. They said, give the Torah and leave it up there in Shamayim. What do you care? The Torah should be tahira l'kayim ha'olam. You need pure Torah. Good. So up in Shamayim, we won't mess it up. We don't need the arvus. We don't need the kids. Zog there, k'moy per oilim. V'oid k'dei shlo yavu ha'oyev lahachras as yisov lahashras oilam ansarecha. The Yidden need the kinderlach to learn because they've got enemies, because they've got Esav, because they have Goyim who want to wipe us out, and Arabs, etc. So we need the schus of not just learning Torah, but learning pure Torah. Learning Torah that is with a penuki. Learning Torah that has that a person brings himself up and is mitayer themselves, mikadesh themselves. Kachenu b'mitzvaysecha, v'sein chelkenu b'soirasecha. When you're kachenu b'mitzvaysecha, to the extent of kachenu b'mitzvaysecha, is v'sein chelkenu b'soirasecha. Avol anu shein banu chet v'atayra shalanu tiloylam tahira. We don't need arvus. That's exactly what the malachim were saying. We don't need it. V'lechein ma enish kisis karena haloiki eresh shamecha matzos besecha kulam tahirim v'lama techafetz lahashre shchinas ba'aretz b'makam tamet. Why do you want to put it down? That says the Zera Shimshon was the whole conversation, but Moshe Rabbeinu, as it says in the Gemara, hichser lehem tshuva. He gave them an answer. And he said, Rebishter told him, Echoiz bekisei kavoidi. Hold on to my kisei hakavod. Vehichser lehem tshuva. Says the Gemara, and then he started answering them. Says the Maral, I heard it from my uncle many times, Rabbi Berger, Scheiner levracha. Echoiz bekisei kavoidi. Ve'echzer lehem tshuva. Gedoyla ve'echzer lehem tshuva. Gedoyla tshuva shemagas ad kisei hakavod. A person could be metama themselves, but then do tshuva and rise up above the angels and get to a mokoim tahar that you can hold on to the kisei hakavod. Show them that you can do something that they can't do. They can't touch the kisei hakavod. They're sviv the kisei hakavod, but you can grab a hold of it. Tshuva gives you a koyach. There is bekitzer, a little child in every single one of us that has that mukam of kedusha, that even when we make a mistake, can always go back to the place of purity, that can always be mitaher themselves. And this Meir of Rabbeisai is the message both for Tu B'Shvat as well as the Zman Parshas Yisro, Parshas Kabbalah HaTorah. When a Yid learns Torah, when we sit down to learn, Baruch Hashem, the Olam comes to learn. The Yetzer Hara sees, there's no way I can tell this Jew not to learn. He's going to come to learn. But let me try to water down the learning. Let me try at least, I won't make it as successful. It shouldn't have the Kedusha. He'll be busy on his phone. He'll be busy with this. He'll be... the Yetzer Hara Cholila, The last thing that he wants is that a mensch soll lernen Torah b'kedusha v'tahara. But it's our understanding, it's our message to know that when a person does learn, you should do it in the most pure way possible. The rest of the world is not negeya. With a certain nikias, with a certain purity, with a certain level of kedusha. The more kadosh we are, the more powerful we are. And, as we said, Tu B'Shvat is that day that reminds us of the energy and the koyach that a yid has. The neshama in the guf, like the sraf in the Elon. That's the koyach of a tree that it can produce and sustain the world in its most natural way. In a Gan Eden style of sustenance. In a way of Eitz Chaim Hila Machazikim Bo. Eitz Chaim, the Torah has a koyach. My Rebbe Zechlein Levacha flagged Zogen. Adam was created and placed big Gan Eden in a place of trees. An Adam is known as Adam Eitz HaSodeh. In Zera Voide is Be'iloinas, Eitz Chaim Machzikim Bo. And eventually, with the success of doing Torah and mitzvahs, we get back to Gan Eden. We go back to a Mokum of Iloinas. The Eloin, the tree that has a koyach to sustain and give life and hashpah and shefa to the world in a way that every other source of eating, when you eat, you cut wheat, it's gone. It disappeared. It's nishda. You kill an animal, it's a nishda. But you take a fruit off of the tree is still there. It'll be there tomorrow and the next year, and it'll continue producing. It's not machal yakarna. You don't have to take anything away from the keren. Elu dvarim she'odam oichel peiroseim ba'olam hazeh va'keren la'olam haba. Torah and mitzvahs is the kind of thing that you eat the peiros and it doesn't touch the keren. The principle is still there. It's a life where a person fuses his neshama with his guf and puts the guf. The neshama that we have is tahirahi. The neshama is the heilige neshama that every Yiddish kinder has. It's the pure neshama. The problem is our guf. The problem is the body. The body, unfortunately, has a mind of its own. But when we allow our neshama to dictate, and that means that a person has to have a conversation with himself, and a person has to say, I'm not doing what my guf wants. I'm doing what my neshama wants. When a person does that, then a person actively is connecting his guf to his neshama. I won't get angry. I'll have patience. I'll have all the positive, all the good midas. And I want to finish off with one thing. Since we're talking about teaching children, I want to say something, and I apologize to any of the Rabbanim who don't like what I say. Too bad. When you learn with kinderlach, you have to make it the most pleasurable experience. To all the fathers and all the zaydis. When a kid doesn't know something, you don't grill him. You don't go, no. You don't make him feel bad, because then he associates Torah with pain. Torah has to be sweet, like Davash. Torah has to be, we were taught, unfortunately, maybe because we're a dor that came after the Holocaust, where unfortunately back then the kinderlach were taught in a different way, and it was tough, and you get petch, and you didn't know you got hit, and you got in trouble. Nisht azoi darf man ois lernen kinder. That's not the way to teach children. It's not, you're learning with a kid, and you see the kid doesn't know, tell him the answer right away. Don't make him feel uncomfortable. Don't make him feel, make it pleasurable. Make it pleasurable. There's a place across the street from my house. It's like they get Slurpees and ice cream. I've never been there. But when I learn with a kid who gets 100 on his test or an 80, that's when I go. That's the only time I've ever been there. To buy him a Slurpee, to get him an ice cream. That's when I've been there. I've been there 3 or 4 times for that reason only. When you make learning with your kinderlach and your einiglach the happiest time, we'll go learn and then we'll go for an ice cream. Then they associate learning with positivity and mevil learning, and they get good grades and they're happy. But as soon as they start associating Torah with negativity, and you're stupid, and why don't you know, chalila, that only pushes a child away from learning. That doesn't motivate the kids. And the hevel pm shel tinoikis, that's the arvus we have. At the end of the day, says the Zera Shimshon, the reason that the malachim, like the Gemara says, at the end of the parak, it says like this: Hashem Adonenu moadir shimcha b'chol haaretz, but it doesn't say tnu haitcha b'shamayim. What it said in the beginning of the parak, what it said, leave the hoid in heaven, says the Gemara in Shabbos, why? Because after Moshe Rabbeinu was successful in answering the malachim, and the Eibishter had a plan for the Torah in this world, they said, Mo'adir Shimcha B'chol Haaretz. But it makes sense that you should give the Torah to this world. Those kinderlach, the heilige kinderlach, Hevel PM Shel Tinoikis, Al Zeh Oimed Ha'olam. The more we nurture them, and we're machshiv them, and we make it easier for them, not difficult, the more established the world is, and the more we're zeicha to have Torah.